Hi everybody, my name is Mannah, Global Artistic Director for Joico. Welcome to Joico Education On Demand, your online source of salon education 24/7. So this longer haircut we're going to be working on is called the Mod Shag. It's a modern version of a shag. We're playing on the word MOD, modern, original, and design. We want to create a modern version of the look, create an original look on Jessica, and design her around her facial features, hair texture, and density, so that suitability factor is on point. So the technique we want to keep very simple, but very technical. And so we're going to be working with some disconnected layers, working with a very beautiful, softer fringe going from shorter to longer, and want to maintain length. This is a perfect example of when clients come in, they want something different, but they want to keep it long. So it's about releasing the right amount of length from the right areas to make it look newer and fresher, but maintaining the length in certain areas to keep Jessica and your clients happy. Okay, so we've pre-sectioned the hair, and what we've done is we've started with a center parting all the way down to the nape, and then began with the back. Diagonal forward sections from below the crown to the top of the ear on both sides. That's our first section, because this is the first section we're going to begin to work the length and the layers. Then what we did is we worked a triangle section for the fringe, so we're isolating the front fringe. The width of this is determined by the density of the hair. In this case, we've used the edge of the eyebrow. And then from that point, we work diagonal back to 2 inches above the ear. So you've got a triangle section through the top. So we've got the back section, the side sections, the top section, and the front section. The reason why we've pre-planned these sections is because we're going to work with one guideline through the back, another guideline through the sides, and another guideline through the top. So even though there's going to be 3 disconnections, they're all going to seamlessly sit on top of each other. And then we've also isolated the fringe because we're going to work that separate to the haircut in terms of the guideline. But all of it will complement each other, and it allows us to work precision throughout each section. If you spend enough time getting the sections right, it's so easy to go through the haircut because it's all pre-sectioned. So it's the same amount of time that you're spending in the salon, but you're being more creative in terms of your thinking and pre-planning the whole section. Okay, so to begin this haircut, we want to take up the length a little bit and then work the layers, because she's got such long hair and very, very thick hair. So consultation is important, and that's why it's very important to sit down with each and every one of your clients, have a chat with them before they get shampooed so you can see the density, the texture of the hair, and then create a technique that's going to give you the exact result that you and your client want to achieve. So to cut the baseline, what I'm going to do is get Jessica to stand up for us. The reason why I'm getting her to stand up is because it's quite long. If she was sitting in the chair, I'd have to elevate that out, and the higher the elevation, the more the graduation. We want 0 graduation, so we want it all at 0 elevation and at natural fall. The other reason why I'm getting her to stand up is so that I can be closer to eye level with her baseline as well. Okay, so really I want to just do this into one section. I don't need to split it because we're going to layer it a little bit later. So I'm going to just comb everything at natural fall. Begin what we call piecemeal sections. So we're going to start in the center by subdividing that area. So as you can see, I'm sitting on a stool. Don't think it's being lazy. Number 1, you're taking care of your lower back. And secondly, you want to be at eye level with the baseline. Okay, so working this nice and natural in terms of natural fall, combing that through. And a good tip is to put your scissors closed underneath and drag the hair so you're not missing any bits, and then cutting it to the desired length. So I'm using the comb as the guide to cut it square. So that squareness is going to be the same all throughout the back. Okay, so we've cut the center. Head position, body position is key. Make sure they're not looking to the left or the right, because then that will adjust and affect the baseline. Check for balance using the comb as a ruler. And just make sure that's square. Another good tip is elevate your elbows, because the minute you lower your elbows, the comb is adjusted, then you end up leaving it longer. So by keeping your elbows up, allows the hair to be maintained square through the baseline. Same on the other side. A little bit longer on the right side. I'll just come back in and cut that corner. But do you see how I use my comb as a guide to get that square? And believe it or not, throughout my travels of education, this is one of the more difficult things a hairdressers find, is to cut a square line. So by getting that down pat and using the comb allows you to get a very clean square line. Now to check for balance, you want to check it not just visually, you want to also check it technically, because sometimes the hair is a little bit drier, it jumps. So you want to go in there and you want to pinch the hair with 2 fingers, and actually don't look at the hair, look away and feel which side is longer. And by doing that, you can really feel and adjust to make it balanced. So like a millimeter longer on this right side. So I'm going to go back in, I can see it. And then another thing you could do to check it is flatten it with your hand. These are little tips to make sure that you've got a nice clean square line. And if there's any little bits that you feel are not right, this is the time to just go in and cut it. Keep still. Again, checking for balance one more time. That feels really good now. Beautiful. And that's how you cut the baseline of a 1 length haircut. So we're going to begin to layer the back section. So for us to do that, we want to take a guideline. Just turn it around so you can see how I'm doing that. Okay, so we're working a center guideline. We've taken a 1-inch section. You really don't want to take it wider than the comb. And this is going to be the guideline now for my layering. Because she has thick hair and because we've taken it up, it's going to be even thicker. So by reducing the weight underneath is going to set me up to work a disconnected layering through the top. So how we do this is we're going to pull this out at an elevation that's 90 to over direction. So that's 90 from there. Then I want to over direct the rest of the hair here. And I can see that the length is not reaching this at this point. So I'm going to start with the top half of the haircut. And we want to release a lot of that weight through in there. Slightly higher elevation, firstly, and then we're going to point cut through that length to reduce weight through this back area. As you're point cutting, you want to make sure there's enough space between your fingers and the guideline. Okay, because you don't want to cut yourself, and sometimes when you leave your fingers too close to the guideline, you can sometimes chip away at your finger and then have little cuts there. So leave enough space between your finger and the guideline and point cut evenly to the desired length. So it's best you put the guideline in first and then have a look at how the hair's responding before you continue on. Fingers parallel to the section and point cut. Okay, I'm going to comb that flat just to see how the hair is sitting. Okay, now when I comb it flat to the hair that's next to it that hasn't been cut, what you'll notice is it's all the same length. So you've still got the square line in there. Her head's tilted, hence why it's looking a little bit angled. But you've got the length there, but what it does, it reduces a lot of the weight because we've got some nice long layers that will sit at least 3-4 inches above the baseline, and that will give us some more movement and promote the wave in the hair. So what we're going to do now is start taking diagonal sections and direct everything to the center. And we're going to do that on both sides. So you're going to create shorter length internally and maintain length externally so that you've got your 2 corners through the baseline. Okay, so the first section is diagonal. You always want to be standing on the same side as the guideline whenever you're layering hair. Okay, a little tip for everybody. If I had a ruler and it was 180 degrees or a comb, anything below we call graduation, anything above we call layering. Whenever you're layering hair, you always want to stand on the same side as the guideline. I'll give you an example. So as we're directing everything to the center, I'll direct it towards me. So the guideline's on my side. When I do this side, I'll stand on the opposite side and direct it towards me. When you're working layers through the front, rather than standing in the front and pushing it away from you, you want to stand in the back and push it towards you so that the guideline is on your side. And that way it gives you more control. You have more control when you're pulling hair towards you, way more than when you're pushing hair away from you. So always stand on the same side as the guideline whenever you're layering the hair. Make sure you can see your guideline and follow that through. Okay, make sure you work the section very, very clean. Keep your fingers parallel to the center parting. You can see the guideline very clearly. A little tip for you, when you're point cutting, what you don't want to do is do it too chunky like that. Because if you do, especially on blonde hair, when you comb it, you're going to get little steps in the hair. So elevate your elbows and then point cut, almost making it look as though it's been chewed off rather than chunky triangles. And that will make the hair a lot more seamless and smoother. And the reason why we're point cutting is because we want to reduce length and weight at the same time, but also give the ends a more natural finish. And that's what point cutting does. You still want to be disciplined, you still want to follow the guideline, but it just allows you to have a more natural finish on the ends. And now I'm going to continue working everything to the center on both sides to give us this inverted layer through the back. Doing the exact same thing on the other side, but now my body position changes and I begin to over-direct towards myself. If you want, you can always clip the other side just to make it simple and easy so you don't pick up any of that hair as you're working the opposite side. Okay, so my body position's on the opposite side. Make sure you can see your guideline and work it towards you in terms of the over-direction and follow the guideline. Okay, so just completed both sides. Want to check for balance. So a really good way for checking balance through the back after layering is to pick up the hair from the same spot and elevate it high. What you want to get is a balance on both sides. Check internally. Okay, you can see the balance. It's a little bit longer on the right side. So this is what I'm going to do, by a millimeter. And that's probably because I directed either this side a little bit much, or I didn't over direct this side as much as the other side. There's not a big difference, but that little difference to me still needs to be adjusted for perfection. So I go back in the same way. I can do it in one section because there's not really much of a difference. Okay, I just comb everything to the center. You can see the guideline just there. It's a little bit, but that little bit makes a difference. It's mostly through the top, but I will check the bottom as well. So as I comb that flat, this now should be perfectly balanced. I will recheck again. So it's important you check for balance before you complete each section. And as you can see, it's perfectly balanced. Okay, so we're going to use the Color Therapy Luster Lock Spray. This is a great cutting agent. It helps to detangle the hair, protect the color, and protect against UV and thermal. So we're just going to go through and spray that generously. Just make sure you shake it really well before use. Another reason why I use the Color Therapy Luster Lock Spray is because it helps me to keep my partings and sections a lot cleaner. There are times where you have a guest coming into the salon and it's very, very difficult to comb through. The Luster Lock Spray is perfect for that because it helps the comb guide through a lot easier, and it makes it so much simpler to work your partings and sections and to be able to cut the hair as well. All right, so with this section, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start to frame the face, and then I'm gonna work the layers. So I'm gonna work diagonal sections, diagonal back sections. So what we wanna do is release a lot of this length to frame the face a lot more, but with high elevation, so it's a lot softer. So we're gonna start with the first half of the section, elevate that so it's T to the parting, and then glide my scissors around the front. And that will open up this area so much more. What you don't want to do is cut the corner off. So you want to make sure your fingers glide with the scissors to the corner of the length. Because this corner, where it's connected to the ear, is actually the corner of the baseline. So if you knock this corner off, you're going to start knocking the back baseline, which we don't want to do. We want to keep that square through the back. So it's going to just going to recheck the angle. Okay, so I'll comb that down just to show you how we've just opened up that whole area a lot more through the front. We're going to continue working diagonal sections, keeping everything at that same elevation, so we create a lot more softness and taking a lot of that length around that front area, but maintaining the corner. It's a lot of hair, so it's probably wise to subdivide, focus on the top, and then work around the bottom. Just going to work a lower elevation just to check the line. So you want that softness and guide there, but you also want to make sure it's a clean line as well, so it looks healthy around the front. Okay, so we're going to cut the other side, working a diagonal back section. The best way to do that for me is to stand behind, because you're going from short to long. It's a lot easier to stand from behind. If you had to stand from the front, it's kind of very difficult to do this and control yourself. So in this case, because I'm right-handed, I would stand from behind and then work that graduation through the front, so it's got a nice balance on both sides. To start the other side, we have one guideline, which is the corner guideline, but we want to also have the starting point here. So the best way to do that is to grab the starting point on both sides, pull them out so it gives you an idea of how short to cut it, and just cut that point there so you know what the starting point is for the opposite side. So as you can see, when the hair drops, you now have a guide from here, and you have a guide to the corner here. So you've got to basically just connect the two. But the best way to do this, I might just take a slightly thicker section. Okay, so we're just going to, again, T to the parting. Make sure we can see our guide, and then slide the scissors down. I do it bit by bit because I don't want to go too short too quick. And that will allow you to have that softness around the front. Now before I carry on, I want to check for balance on both sides. So I'm going to make sure I'm square to Jessica and check for both sides. Make sure we're happy with the balance. Okay, so we're just checking the graduation, making sure it's clean and going to be balanced on both sides. Some of you call this layering through the front. Some of you call it feathering. I guess the reason why I call it graduation is because throughout my training, we were taught that it's a forward graduation. And because the elevation's at 45 degrees, that means it's under that 180 degrees in terms of elevation. We call that graduation. But if you call it feathering or if you call it layering, that's just as good. I guess express it the way you feel comfortable. But the way I express it, I kind of refer to it as a forward graduation. So we're going to continue through taking diagonal back sections and utilize the stationary guideline, making sure the elevation's the same. You can see my guideline. Easy, very, very easy. And it's very, very important to also make sure the hair is actually moist with water or with the Luster Lock spray, because it allows the scissors to glide through a lot easier. I'm just going to take a little bit less hair so I have better control. And if you're not used to this, standing from behind does take some practice, But that's what it's all about. It's about practicing and being better at your art each time you try something new. And then work it through until you reach the corner. Last section, subdivide the top first. Focus on that area. Keep the elevation the same. Distribution, T to the parting. You can see how it's T to the parting, but parting's diagonal back. I'll check for balance, make sure I'm happy with both sides. Okay, so once we've finished the graduation around the front, the forward graduation, what we want to do is connect the baseline with the back. Normally speaking, or classically speaking, you would direct everything back. But in this case, I want to work square. So everything's square from the back and everything's square from the sides. And what that will do is it will allow the hair to sit square from the front rather than into a point. Okay, doing the exact same thing on the other side. Natural fall, there's my guide, and then we're going to check for balance. Cool. Okay, so once we've completed the sides and the back, we're going to isolate those away and clip them so it's nice and clean. So now we've come to the fringe or the bang area. I think this is very important, probably the most important part of this whole haircut, because the fringe can either make or break a haircut. I always say the fringe is like a frame to a picture. If you've got a beautiful picture, you want a beautiful frame to complement and accentuate that picture. Same with the fringe. So for me, what I want to do, I want to go shorter in the center and then longer through the sides. So rather than just pulling it out and cutting it horizontally, we're going to work a layering pattern starting vertically and then working horizontally. So you'll see a nice variation of layering a fringe. So how I work a fringe is I always leave it a little bit longer and then go a little bit shorter. So I can see the suitability factor on Jessica. So just going to look up. I still think that's a bit too long, so we're going to go a little bit shorter. And I'm keeping in mind, obviously it's going to jump when the hair is dry. Make sure it's round and follow through with point cutting. Just going to go through a little bit more. This is going to be the shortest part of the fringe because it's going to be longer on both sides. And that's as short as I want it from the center. Okay, so we're going to subdivide that section on both sides. And now what we're going to do is work horizontally through the bottom. So we've just put the guideline in, and now we're going to work with elevation and work from that guideline. I'm switching my fingers now from horizontal to vertical. My section is horizontal, but I'm actually switching my fingers around and then working point cutting to give us length through the sides. So as we comb this out, you'll start to see the shorter pieces through the center and it'll get longer through the sides. Same thing with this section where the elevation is higher. And it gives you a really nice short to long. And why have we done it like this? Because we want a few shorter pieces in the middle and we want that softness to visually blend through the disconnected graduation. So even though it's not technically connected to this first point of graduation, visually it's going to be connected and be very soft around the front. So taking our first section and then working the same technique but switching my fingers to the opposite side. Before I continue, I just want to check for balance. A little bit longer on the right side, the same and the same. So it's just longer through the corner here. It's always better to leave it a little bit longer on the second side because you can always go in a little bit shorter and cut that through. Second section, doing the exact same thing. So go back to the center parting. So you have a clear guideline to follow. Elevation's a little bit higher. So now your fingers are parallel to this section. Okay, the diagonal triangle section. Just cut that off so it's going to be easier to comb through and have a look at the point cutting that you've got to do to connect the two guidelines. And this is a really nice technical way to cut a bang like this, where it's shorter from the center and longer on either side. So you're not just relying on feeling, you're actually relying on technique. And why that's important is because we don't feel the same all the time. And when the client comes back in and wants the exact same look, you want to rely on a technique to be able to reproduce that rather than on a feeling. Feeling is important because you want to put your stamp to it, but you also want to have a technique to be able to recreate. Again, check technically, not just visually, because hair can be deceiving when it's half wet and half dry. Okay, and that's how you cut this fringe where it's shorter to longer. And you know, this is not the only way of doing it, there's so many different ways. So we never ever dictate when it comes to education what's right and what's wrong. We always like to share how we do it and then you adapt it in your own way with your own techniques. Okay, so with the top section, our last sections for the haircut, we want to work a new guideline and disconnect it. And how we're going to do that is by taking sections parallel to this diagonal back, elevate and work from short to long. I'm putting my comb in the start and my finger on the other side. I'm going to drag the comb to my finger. So that way I'm not interrupting any of the other sections. And now, where is my guide? Okay, because there is actually no guide for this particular technique. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece from the back layering and use that as a guide to work from a longer point. So I'm going to keep it about ½ inch longer, which is about there, and I'm going to work from short to long. So that's going to be the longest point. So I'm going to cut a lot of that hair off first, so it's going to be easy to point cut. And that's working from long to short. And this will complement also the forward graduation. And that's why we're working from short to long. So when that collapses, when I pull that down, it works with my forward graduation. So we're just going to check the guideline once more. So first I want to check the line, make sure I'm happy, and then make sure that that guideline is not far off from the back area. So this is my point, and this is my other point. So let's see. Okay, so it's about ½ inch longer. That's fine because as it travels, it'll fall a lot softer. So each section now is over directed forward to this guide. So just going to grab the remaining hair from the top. I'm going to subdivide for precision. If you had finer hair, I probably could do it in one section. And I'm over directing everything forward. Last section, everything is directed forward, parallel to the diagonal back. Once I've put the technique in, I just go back through, I comb it again, really cool tip, close it with your fingers, like so, and just point cut. Deep point cut. And that reduces excess weight. Cool, gonna do the exact same thing on the other side. Let me just get the starting point first. So we're just going to use the same starting point on this side. So I'm going to take a little section, and that will be my guideline. I can drop the guideline on the other side as I don't need it anymore, and then work through to length on this side and then check for balance. Now before I continue working the whole section through this area, I'm going to make sure I'm happy with the balance on both sides when it comes to the very top here. I feel like this is a little bit longer, so I just go back in and check the corner length and just make sure it's balanced. If this is balanced, we're good to go. Okay, it's about ½ inch longer. So I'm just going to go back in here, take a little bit off, and then we can continue with the rest of the haircut. So working parallel sections exactly the same as the other side and directing it forward. Okay, again, if it falls over your fingers, just cut that off. Last section on this side, make sure the distribution is clean. I always use the fine end of the comb whenever I'm combing the hair through, unless it's curly hair, and then I would use the wide end of the comb to allow the hair to breathe a little bit more because it jumps. But when working most of my haircuts, I normally use the fine end, so I have a clean distribution, and so I can see the guideline very cleanly as well. I think that makes a difference. You know, when you take your time, you take your clean sections, you follow your guideline, it allows the haircut to last a lot longer. It's like buying a suit. When you buy a suit that's bespoke to your body, number one, it looks a lot better and more expensive, and it fits you a lot better. Same with hair. When you work technically and you adjust it around the head shape, the hair density, the face shape, all of it together makes it look a lot more suitable. It makes it look better as well. So you're gonna do the exact same thing on this side. I'm gonna pinch the hair with my fingers. First comb it. And point cut. Now I just want to check for balance on both sides. Okay, touch longer on this side, a little bit. Gonna go back in, same section, elevate everything up and out. You see all these little hairs come out. That's from the point cutting. Okay, so now we're gonna just comb all the hair through and actually check the shape that we've put in there. So even though we've worked disconnections, it's all gonna seamlessly sit on top of each other. What you do wanna check now is to make sure that no hair is hanging over the graduation, because if you've left the layers a bit too long, you will get a little bit of an overhang, which is totally fine. You just go through and cut it off. It's all dependent on how long you leave it and how short you take it. And that's a popular question people always ask us. How short do you take it? How long do you leave it? I guess it's about customizing it or designing it around your client. Like I said in the beginning, it's called the mod shag. So it's modern, original, and design. Take that design element and design it around your client. Whether you want to take it shorter or leave it longer, I guess is totally up to you. And it's about working with your client, having that consultation and making sure it actually helps you create the end result, because that's what it's about. To be honest, clients don't care what technique we use. All they care about is the end result. It's up to us as hairdressers to utilize the right techniques to create the right results. Okay guys, so here is the finished result of the mod shag. The color that Larissa's done is incredible. You can see how important color is to complement haircuts and for haircuts to complement color. They work really well together to give us this beautiful finished result. From a cutting point of view, you can see how we've worn the fringe into a slight flick. We've worked the curling irons just to create more of a bend rather than a curl. And then we've used the body shake and the beat shake into this hair and shook it out to give us this beautiful separation. So you can see as I turn her around, you can see these beautiful seamless layers. As you shake it, it gives you enough layers to give you that mod shag feel, but it's still got enough weight through the perimeter to maintain a lot of the length and make it look healthy and thick. So as she turns around, you can see it again from the front, and as you push the hair forward, it's just beautiful, it's healthy, it's the mod shag. I hope you like this class. Thank you for watching Joico Education on Demand.